The crowd at St. Peter's Square fell silent as the woman's scream pierced the air. In an instant, Karen Donovan had lunged through the security barrier, throwing herself directly at the stoic Swiss guard protecting Pope Leo XIV. The guard, a towering man with centuries of tradition literally on his shoulders, caught her midair with reflexes that defied his ceremonial appearance. Instead of forcing her to the ground as protocol demanded, he looked into her tear-streaked face and did something that left the thousands of witnesses in stunned silence. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories of extraordinary human moments that change lives forever, make sure to click that subscribe button. This is the best way for you to support our work. Thank you very much, and let's continue. Rome was experiencing an unusually warm May in 2025. The election of Robert Francis, Cardinal Prevost as Pope Leo XIV, just days earlier, had brought unprecedented crowds to Vatican City. As the first American pope in history, his appearance for today's general audience had drawn faithful from across the globe, particularly Americans eager to glimpse their countryman now leading the world's 1.4 billion Catholics. Among them stood Karen Donovan, a 42-year-old elementary school teacher from Milwaukee. Outwardly, she blended with the excited crowd, dressed modestly in a light blue dress, her brown hair neatly pulled back. But inside, she carried a weight invisible to those around her. 3 months earlier, she had received the diagnosis that had shattered her world: Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors had given her 6 months, maybe less. After the initial shock and grief, she had made a decision that brought her to this sun-drenched square to see the new pope before she died. The Swiss guards stood at their posts, magnificent in their traditional uniforms of blue, red, and yellow, a design unchanged since the Renaissance. Their halberds gleamed in the morning light as they maintained their vigilant watch. Among them was Lieutenant Marco Bernardi, a 29-year-old from the Italian-speaking canton of Ticino in Switzerland. He had served in the Guard for 7 years, rising through the ranks through dedication and an unwavering sense of duty. Standing at 6'4" with broad shoulders and a face that could have been carved from Alpine granite, he cut an imposing figure. For Marco, this day was particularly meaningful. It would be his first time guarding Pope Leo XIV during a general audience. The Swiss Guard had a special connection to this new pontiff, who had often spoken warmly of their service during his time as a cardinal. Marco stood straighter, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd while maintaining the dignified posture required of his position. At precisely 10:30 a.m., a murmur rippled through the gathered faithful as the white-robed figure of Pope Leo XIV emerged from the bronze door of the Apostolic Palace. The 69-year-old pontiff, a Chicago native known for his warm smile and gentle demeanor, waved to the crowd as he made his way to the covered platform where he would deliver his address and blessing. His first weeks as pope had already endeared him to many, with his calls for peace in conflict zones and emphasis on compassion for the marginalized. Karen felt her heart pounding as she watched the pope approach. Through a fortunate coincidence, or providence as she had come to believe, she had secured a position along the barricade near where the pope would pass. She clutched a small wooden rosary, a family heirloom passed down from her Italian grandmother. Despite not being particularly religious for most of her adult life, the diagnosis had reawakened something in her. She had found herself returning to the faith of her childhood, seeking comfort in its familiar rituals and promises. As Pope Leo XIV moved along the barricade, pausing occasionally to bless a child or exchange a few words with the faithful, Karen felt a strange calm settle over her. The chronic pain that had become her constant companion seemed to recede. She watched as the pontiff drew closer, his kind eyes connecting briefly with each person he greeted. This moment, she realized, was what she had traveled thousands of miles for. Not necessarily to speak with him, but simply to be in his presence, to carry that memory with her into whatever came next. Lieutenant Bernardi maintained his position, several paces from the Pope, his eyes constantly monitoring the crowd for any sign of threat. He had been trained to identify potential security risks, to notice the subtle shifts in behavior that might indicate danger. So, when he saw the American woman with the tired eyes and determined expression begin to move differently, a subtle tension entered his stance. Karen hadn't planned what happened next. As Pope Leo XIV came within a few feet of her, something overwhelming surged within her, a desperate need to make contact, to receive a blessing, directly, to be seen truly in her suffering. Without conscious thought, she pushed against the barricade, which gave way slightly under the pressure. In that moment, a path opened before her, and she lunged forward. "Holy Father!" she cried out, her voice breaking with emotion as she threw herself toward the Pope. Time seemed to slow. Security protocols activated instantly. Other Swiss guards moved to create a protective formation around the pontiff, who had stopped in surprise. Lieutenant Bernardi reacted with the speed drilled into him through countless training exercises, intercepting Karen before she could reach Pope Leo XIV. His powerful arms caught her mid-motion, but instead of the forceful takedown his training dictated, something made him hesitate. Maybe it was the lack of malice in her eyes. Maybe it was the religious medal he glimpsed around her neck, similar to one his own mother wore. Or perhaps it was some deeper instinct, honed through years, of discerning true threats from mere overenthusiasm. Whatever the reason, in that split-second decision, Marco Bernardi did not slam the intruder to the ground. Instead, he held her firmly but gently, supporting her weight as she collapsed against him, sobbing now. "Please," she whispered, "I just need his blessing. I'm dying." The square had gone quiet, thousands of eyes fixed on this unexpected drama. Other guards had moved into position, ready to remove the woman, but the lieutenant made a subtle gesture for them to hold. Pope Leo XIV, protected but not panicked, looked toward the commotion with concern rather than fear. "What is happening here?" the pontiff asked in English, his Chicago accent still evident despite his years in Peru and Rome. Lieutenant Bernardi maintained his firm hold on Karen but addressed the Pope with respect. "Holy Father, this woman breached the barrier. She says she needs your blessing." Karen looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare anyone. I have cancer, pancreatic, stage 4. I came all this way. I just wanted—" Her voice faltered as emotion overwhelmed her. The Pope's expression softened with compassion. Instead of retreating or allowing his security detail to remove her, he took a step forward. "Bring her to me," he said quietly. The crowd watched in astonishment as Lieutenant Bernardi, still holding Karen securely but now more like a supporter than a restrainer, helped her to stand before the Pope. The other Swiss guards maintained their protective formation but followed their superior's lead, creating a small space in which this unexpected encounter could unfold. Pope Leo XIV looked into Karen's eyes with genuine concern. "What is your name, my daughter?" "Karen," she managed to say between tears. "Karen Donovan from Milwaukee." The Pope nodded, then reached out to take her hands in his. "Karen from Milwaukee, I am truly sorry for your suffering. May I pray with you?" She nodded, unable to speak. The pontiff closed his eyes and began to pray, first in Latin, then in English, asking for God's comfort and peace to be with this woman in her trial. As he spoke, Lieutenant Bernardi remained at Karen's side, no longer restraining her but ensuring she didn't collapse as emotion weakened her knees. What happened next would be reported in newspapers around the world and shared millions of times on social media. Pope Leo XIV reached into his white cassock and removed a small silver crucifix he wore on a chain around his neck. It was a personal item, not part of the official papal regalia, but something he had carried for decades. "This cross was given to me when I was first ordained," he explained, placing it gently in Karen's palm. "It has brought me comfort in many dark hours. Now, I want you to have it, as a reminder that you are never alone in your suffering." Karen stared at the gift in disbelief. "Holy Father, I can't take this. It's too precious." The Pope smiled. "More precious is the faith that brought you here. Keep it, pray with it, and know that I will be praying for you as well." He then placed his hands on her head and gave her a formal blessing. Throughout this exchange, Lieutenant Bernardi had maintained his position, his face revealing nothing of his thoughts as he performed this unexpected role in a moment of papal compassion. Only after the blessing was complete did the lieutenant speak quietly to Karen. "I need to escort you back now. Are you able to walk?" She nodded, clutching the crucifix tightly. As Bernardi began to guide her gently back to the barricade, Pope Leo XIV spoke again. "Lieutenant, please ensure this woman has a seat for the remainder of the audience. She has come a long way." "Yes, Holy Father," the Swiss guard responded with a crisp nod that managed to convey both his military discipline and his approval of the Pope's request. And so Karen found herself guided, not back into the crowd, but to a chair in a section normally reserved for visiting dignitaries and special guests of the Vatican. Lieutenant Bernardi personally escorted her, then resumed his post, though his eyes occasionally checked on her throughout the remainder of the audience. News of the incident spread rapidly, first through whispers in the crowd, then through social media posts from witnesses, and finally through official press channels. Initial alarm over a security breach quickly transformed into a story of compassion once the full circumstances became known. Images of the imposing Swiss guard catching Karen mid-leap, then supporting her as she received the Pope's blessing, went viral within hours. For Karen, the moment marked a turning point. Though her medical prognosis remained unchanged, something fundamental had shifted in her approach to the time she had left. The Pope's gift and blessing became a source of strength in the difficult months that followed. She wore the crucifix constantly, often holding it during painful treatments or sleepless nights. But the story didn't end in St. Peter's Square. 3 weeks after her return to Milwaukee, Karen received an unexpected phone call from the Vatican. Pope Leo XIV had been following her situation and had arranged for her to receive specialized treatment at Gemelli University Hospital, the same facility that had treated previous popes. Though not a miracle cure, the advanced protocols available there offered her more time and better quality of life than her doctors in Wisconsin had been able to provide. For Lieutenant Marco Bernardi, the incident became a defining moment in his career with the Swiss Guard. His split-second decision to secure the situation without unnecessary force, to recognize genuine human need amid his security duties, earned him commendation from his superiors. More significantly, it prompted a review of Swiss Guard protocols for handling non-threatening barrier breaches, particularly those involving individuals in evident distress. When interviewed months later about his actions that day, the lieutenant remained characteristically modest. "I was simply doing my duty," he told the Vatican News Service. "Part of our oath is to protect the Holy Father, but we serve in a place of mercy. Sometimes protection takes different forms." Pope Leo XIII himself referenced the incident in a general audience several months later without naming Karen directly. "The Church must be a field hospital for the suffering," he said, echoing a favorite phrase of his predecessor. "Sometimes those in greatest pain will not wait politely at the door, but will throw themselves toward help with their last strength. It is our duty to catch them with compassion, not judgment." Karen's health journey continued with its ups and downs. The treatments in Rome gave her precious additional months. She used that time to establish a foundation helping cancer patients navigate the overwhelming logistics of treatment and travel for specialized care. She named it the Leap of Faith Foundation, an acknowledgement of her impulsive action in St. Peter's Square. 1 year after their first encounter, Karen returned to Vatican City, considerably weaker but determined to express her gratitude in person. This time, her visit was officially arranged, no barriers to breach. She was received in a private audience where Pope Leo XIII remembered her immediately. "Karen, from Milwaukee," he greeted her warmly. "I see you still wear the cross." "Every day, Holy Father," she replied, her voice thin but her spirit evident. "It has traveled with me through some very dark valleys." The Pope nodded in understanding. "And Lieutenant Bernardi will be pleased to see you as well. He asks about you sometimes." Indeed, arrangements had been made for the Swiss Guard officer to be present for this reunion. When he entered the papal study in his formal uniform, his stoic expression softened slightly at the sight of Karen. Though protocol prevented him from speaking first in the Pope's presence, he gave her a small nod of recognition. Karen smiled at the man who had caught her in more ways than one. "I never properly thanked you, Lieutenant. I put you in a terrible position that day." "You gave me an opportunity to serve with mercy, Signora Donovan," he replied formally, though there was warmth behind his words. "For that, I am grateful." Pope Leo XIV watched this exchange with approval. "You see, Karen, your act, impulsive though it was, has borne fruit in many ways. It reminded all of us that behind every protocol and barrier lies our true purpose, to bring God's love to a hurting world." The private audience concluded with another papal blessing, this one planned and peaceful. As Karen prepared to leave, Lieutenant Bernardi was assigned to escort her from the papal apartments. In the quiet of a Vatican corridor away from cameras and crowds, she finally asked the question that had lingered in her mind. "What made you catch me that way? You could have taken me down. You were trained to do that, weren't you?" The Swiss guard considered her question carefully before answering. "In that moment, Signora, I saw something in your eyes. Not threat, but desperate hope. My training teaches me to distinguish between danger and distress." He paused, then added with rare personal disclosure, "My sister had that same look before she died of leukemia 10 years ago. Some things you never forget." This revelation, that the Stoic Guard had been moved by personal experience to recognize her pain, gave Karen's story a final dimension of meaning. What had appeared to the world as a dramatic security incident followed by papal compassion had in fact been a chain of human connections. Her desperate need, the Guard's empathetic recognition, the Pope's responsive mercy. Karen Donovan passed away peacefully 4 months after this Second Vatican visit. At her request, the silver crucifix given to her by Pope Leo XIII was returned to him with a letter of gratitude. The pontiff, visibly moved upon receiving it, decided not to keep it for himself but instead entrusted it to the Swiss Guard Museum with a special plaque telling Karen's story. To this day, visitors to the museum often linger longest at this display, captivated by the tale of a dying woman's desperate leap, a guard's compassionate catch, and a pope's merciful response. Vatican guides report that many visitors leave with tears in their eyes, touched by this tangible reminder that even the most rigid institutions and formal protocols can bend in the presence of authentic human need. For his part, Lieutenant Marco Bernardi continued his service with the Swiss Guard for many years, eventually rising to the rank of commander. Under his leadership, the Corps implemented new training specifically addressing compassionate security responses, balancing their ancient duty of protection with the spirit of mercy central to their faith. The Donovan Protocol, as it came to be informally known among the guards, has been credited with transforming numerous potential incidents into moments of dignity and grace. And as for the moment itself, that startling leap and unexpected catch in St. Peter's Square, it remains a powerful symbol of what can happen when desperation meets compassion, when strict boundaries encounter human mercy. In a world often defined by barriers and protocols, It stands as a reminder that sometimes the most profound connections occur precisely when someone dares to cross the lines that separate us from one another. Pope Leo XIV, reflecting on the incident years later in his autobiography, would write, "In that moment when Karen breached our security, she also breached something in our hearts. Her action, born of suffering and hope, challenged us to examine where we place our true security. Do we find it in barriers and protocols, or in the courage to catch one another in our most vulnerable leaps of faith?" The image of the imposing Swiss guard catching Karen midair, his face transforming from alert vigilance to compassionate understanding, has become one of the defining images associated with Pope Leo XIV's pontificate. It appears in books about his papacy, in documentaries about the Swiss Guard, and in countless reflections on the nature of security and compassion in the modern church. What began as a security breach, a desperate woman throwing herself at a pope's protector, became instead a powerful testament to humanity's capacity for recognition and response to suffering. The guard's reaction indeed shook everyone, not with force or fear, but with the unexpected power of merciful strength. In the end, it was not just Karen who made a leap of faith that day. The Swiss Guard, in choosing compassion over protocol, made one as well. And in that space between leaping and landing, something extraordinary happened. A reminder that sometimes our most desperate lunges toward help are caught not by judgment, but by hands strong enough to hold us in our brokenness and gentle enough to honor our pain. This is the legacy of that startling moment in St. Peter's Square, that even in our most desperate lunges toward help, we may find ourselves caught not by judgment, but by mercy. And in being so caught, we might discover that our greatest falls can become our most profound opportunities for grace.